right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. The Town Hall session begins right now. We're talking about CBC Blackboard. This is our series, a continued series until the task force delivers its report. That is happening next week. Tonight, we're talking about life skills and values. And my guest already with me in studio, Dr. John Mugu, Executive Director, Zizi Afrique. Asante sana for making time. And Dr. Purity Ngina, Evidence Manager, Zizi Afrique. Thank you so much for making time as well. We are welcome to send in your views as well at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. We'll sample some of them in just a bit. Also, you can send in an SMS. Tell us your name and where you're texting from 22422. Has the CBC instilled any life skills or values that you've seen in your learner or a child or a pupil, if you have one around you? Let us know your experience. And let's start right there. And Dr. Mugu, I'll start with you. So, what really are life skills and values, and why are they so important?
Thank you so much, and good evening to everyone. When you talk about life skills, so there is a life and a skill, it's a wide range of competencies, things that we learn, and which quite often apply in different situations, not just in one. So it could apply now while I'm seated here in the studio. I can use the same skill when I'm going home and all that. So it's a skill, meaning it is something that you have that you can do and demonstrate, but also that you learn. An example is something, and we'll be talking about it, like problem solving, how to solve problems, because problems keep popping up here and there, and you can't tell which problem it will be, but it is a way of understanding and dealing with that situation. Or things like collaborating, that working together with people. I'll work together with people when I'm in this situation, if it's a child when they are playing with children at school, but also at home, also during the holiday. These are a wide range of skills, and in the context of CBC, they are called the core competencies. And 7 core competencies have been defined, including problem solving and critical thinking, communication and collaboration, learning to learn, digital literacy. And then on the other hand, we have values. So values are attitudes, are behaviors that we form and that become part of us, and which we draw from in relating with other people, but also with self. And they are portrayed through behavior, that outward. So one value, for instance, could be honesty. That thing you learn, no one can touch it. It's not a skill, but you are just an honest person. So these are things that mainly define the person, but they also help us to navigate through life, whether we are working or we are learning or we are teaching or we are doing whatever we do on a day-to-day basis. You will see on the streets, if you walk out here, people who have them more and people who have them less. And so that is why it has become so important to focus on these skills and competencies rather than leaving them to chance and focusing on the head only. Going for an education that is focusing on the head and the mind, but also focusing on the heart, those feelings and how you regulate the feelings, and in relating with other people and in relating with yourself and situations, but also educating the hand, what you are able to do, practically with your body.
Okay. Let me bring in Dr. Ngina on this. How do you define this to the people who claim that in itself, the 7 core competencies of CBC: communication and collaboration, critical thinking and problem solving, imagination and creativity, citizenship, learning to learn, self-efficacy, digital literacy, in itself marginalizes some people? For example, when you bring in digital literacy.
Of course, and I was reflecting today why people sometimes feel uncomfortable with some of these core competencies. And I think what we are not able to see is the bigger picture. So most of the time, and I mean 844, most of us were taught to think about where you'll get employed, and your technical capacity mattered a lot, your maths, your science, and all that. But when you think about the future of work, we don't know what is going to happen in 2030. And what we need then are these transferable competencies, you know, critical thinking. You need someone, whether they are trained to be teachers, and then that time probably no one need them because Google will be, you know, I'm just giving an example. So you need someone who can transfer what they learn to a different field. And of course, you look at some of these things, they seems to require a lot of resources, which is not true, because if you look at collaboration, and if a teacher needs to promote collaboration in class, it means all the activities must be done by a group of people, because you cannot collaborate as an individual. But what we have seen is sometimes the interpretation of what needs to be done is not in a way that it promotes collaboration. It is still promote this egocentric way of looking at things from the child and without sharing with the others. But can you imagine if sometimes I look at what the learners need to do, maybe they need to stitch something. If you bring them as a team and tell them to work together, first you reduce the resources that parents need to, you know, to contribute, because they can buy the material together in that group, and then they can do the work together. And that way the learner is able to communicate, to share ideas, to negotiate, to be more creative, because the environment is favoring. So I think I don't agree with most of those sentiments, but of course digital literacy, and I'm happy that the current government is promising to do something to ensure that every learner is equipped, you know, what is needed to ensure that digital literacy is promoted. But again, sometimes we also in a box where digital literacy, as much as we know the importance of it, our children will never thrive in that space if we don't teach them values, because most parents feel like they should not allow their learners to access computers, to access phones, because they think of the things they're going to find there. But assuming you trained your child to be responsible, to have done some of these values we are talking about, to think critically of the decisions they're going to make, it means then we can achieve digital literacy without even having to block some of these things, you know, having to say your child cannot access phone, you're not there, they cannot go to the internet when you're not there. Because again, if they cannot use the gadgets, then how will they ever learn? So we need to really focus on values and even these other 6 core competencies, because they'll help us to get to the level where we are not scared of what the learners are checking, because we know we have trained them how to think critically, how to reevaluate the decisions they are making, how to, you know, to have even that belief in what they are doing is right, and knowing what is right, and thinking about self, but also looking at self through the lens of the others, which you will look at what self-efficacy is trying to promote is how you own your life, but then you're also looking at this through the lens of what the other people say in you. So these core competencies, just retaliating what John said, is that they are very quite important. But then we need to work together to promote. If you look back when we were in school, we were trained to hide our work, you know, whether exactly that is how we were trained, and that in itself is wrong. We cannot train children right now to just think about themselves. We need them to work together. We need to produce an environment that can nurture some of these competencies, which is beyond the blackboard. Because if you want to teach me how to collaborate, I don't think you need to stand in front and tell me collaborate. You need to give me practical aspects of things I can do with my team to learn to work together. Or if you want me to find solution to things, and you look at problem solving, most of us did not ask questions in class. If you ask questions, you are labeled. And in the process, then this CBC promises our children a future which has a better, you know, outlook. If you look at the future in the lens of CBC, it means that our children will be more prepared to face a world that is filled with so many uncertainty.
And that's an interesting point that you bring in. But Dr. Mugu, let's try and talk about this maybe one at a time. So the 7 core competencies are there: communication and collaboration. At what point do you draw the line on the teacher's role and the parent's role? Because most of the learners, they do things by imitation. If the teacher says communicate or collaborate, but in the family setup, that doesn't happen. So isn't there some cognitive dissonance for the learner there? And whose role is it to instill this particular competence of communication and collaboration to the learner?
Actually, you have raised a good point, Trevor, because education now must collapse the walls that have existed between home and school. And already it has happened. Previously, we went to school to learn and acquire knowledge. Now we learn everywhere we are. And so that role that the teacher had, you know that the teacher, and I was a teacher myself, we used to be powerful people. Because the book that you have, no student has. Some of those books even you could not get into in the libraries. Maybe I traveled abroad and came with a book and I'm the only one who has in the whole place. And I would open a page and dish out that particular page. Now, when something is happening now as we sit here in the studio, everyone knows about it. And so that monopoly of knowledge that the teacher used to bear has to diminish. But also, I think parents have not known how powerful we are, because children learn from the day they are born. And the first major teacher, an immense power, has been the parent. And I don't think many parents know how much of influence they have on their children. Because for 3 years, you are the only teacher. Then when you take now the 3-year-old to the kindergarten, is one among 20 or 30 to one teacher. And the other ratio at home was 1 to 1. So that immense force that is a parent, I think, has to be drawn, because things like values, let's say respect. You don't wait until when you are 4 years old to go to school to learn respect.
Yeah.
A lot of what you have learned home is what you carry to school. And so the parent must see themselves also as a teacher, and the teacher is also a parent, because when I'm teaching, I'm also a parent figure because I'm an adult to those children. And so that movement from home and school, that consistency is what we need for values to take charge. Many of the values, for instance, will not be taught on the blackboard, as Dr. Ngena is saying. That I'm here now to teach you love, right love.
Yeah.
It is about experiencing it, organizing the school or classroom environment so that children can feel it, can practice it. And the teacher can demonstrate that. And when at home, the parent can demonstrate that. So if we want these things to, for our children to have them, we have to commit ourselves as adults to first practice them. Because children learn through imitating what the adults are doing.
Yeah.
And so parents and teachers, you people in the media, you know what you are reporting and what kind of things you are portraying, children are watching. When our parliamentarians are in session, if you are throwing seats to each other in the county assembly, just know that you are failing Kenya and the next generation in terms of acquiring values, because they should be watching TV and seeing how people debate, how people disagree with each other's opinions, but respectively. So I think everyone, not just the parents and teacher, but all of us, we are blackboards on which children learn these competencies.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. We are blackboards where they learn. And let me bring Dr. Ngena on this, and the second issue, critical thinking and problem solving. They are coming in at a time, and we were talking about this during the break, where the generation that is supposed to encourage them to ask questions never believed that you're supposed to question your parent that much. So where do you draw the line? How do you balance those two? The learners are here, the CBC, they're being taught about critical thinking and problem solving, but they're coming to a generation that is not used to being asked so many questions by a young person, a learner. So how do you encourage them to continue asking? But then there's another concern. What if they ask questions and this parent is unable to answer because they're simply not at the same level?
Yeah, interesting question. For sure, sometimes you have to think of where you draw the line. But I think from where I sit, if you look at problem solving and critical thinking, these are cognitive skills, and they have such a logical process to the point you solve a problem. But what you see is that if you look at problem solving, one really need to understand, to define the problem. The problem you want to go solve, you need to define it, to understand it, to look for solutions, and then to apply the best of that solution. But then, what we have seen is that sometimes we don't get to the process, to that logical process. You ask a question. In classroom, the teacher just points to the person who always have the hands up, and that's it. And maybe it is one in a class of 50 who will always answer the question. So the others, maybe they were still in their thought process of thinking, what is this problem? What do I need to know about the problem? Why is the problem? Why is the teacher asking this? But as you said, parents, when we were growing up, but I think now this new generation is, coming to life, to the reality that we need to allow our children to ask questions. We need to allow them, because asking questions is a form of curiosity. You're asking because, you want to know why. Why are we doing this? Why do you do this? Why do you wake up early? Why do you do this, Mama? Why do you go to work? Why are you not at home?
Yeah.
And as a parent then, as John is saying, we need to think then, how do we build the capacity of parents, of these 21st parents, to deal with that 21st child, 21st century child, who is different from where you're coming from. And so we have a bigger responsibility because if you want education, and I'm happy that John has said learning doesn't need to happen in classroom, it needs to happen everywhere. If you need then parents to facilitate learning, to be agents of change, even youth and communities, there are some guidelines and framework we need to keep on working on to, when we go for parents' meeting. What are we telling parents? Because sometimes it's not like they don't want to support learning. It's because they don't know the how to support learning. And we are coming at a time where these parents, most of them, maybe they don't have the enough competency that is needed to nurture these competencies, or even they don't even understand them. One of the things you realize is that you'll find a parent maybe thinking that cooking is a life skill, and cooking is an activity that facilitates learners to get the life skill. So for them, maybe when they are cooking and they have been told to take videos and all that, they don't think about what is happening. They just, the teacher said we need to make rice together. Yeah. That's it. But then in that process, they need to be having conversations. So you're allowing your child to know how to communicate, to work with you. You're sharing stories from your past experiences, and this is building the imagination of your child. Yeah. But the activity itself has nothing to do with life skill. And I keep saying that sometimes when people don't understand these life skills, I just tell people, if you go for an interview, what are these questions that will pop up? Maybe someone will tell you, Trevor, tell us about your leadership skills. Have you ever led anything? And maybe the job they're inviting you for did not require you to have leadership or to lead. But they're looking for those aspects that during the leadership process, you maybe had critical thinking, you were a collaborator, you were thinking about a team, you had a bigger vision and all that. And maybe other questions that I've seen many times is, what are these challenges that you have faced in your former place of employment and all that? And how did you deal with them? They want to understand your critical your problem-solving aspects, and they want to see, because problem-solving for sure, Trevor, you can only understand critical thinking after someone solves a problem. Is when you'll say, huyu mtu anafikiria. This person, this person is being, so you analyze problem solving, or the observable aspects of critical thinking are seen when someone solves a problem, and that is why they always go together. Yeah. But what we need to understand is that problem solving is really a cognitive kind of skills. It is in the cognitive domain. It is together with decision making and all those sort of aspects. But I think parents then, as a community, as educators, we need to think about what is this framework? Yeah. How can we, and maybe we not figure it out now, but then every day, we have places where we know their parents, for sure. You look at their children, you know they have done something. So researchers such as Dr. John Mugo, is a challenge to them to think then, how can they continue documenting some of these things that have worked in our context? Yeah. Because again, when you look at other contexts, everybody is talking about the importance of these life skills, social-emotional learning, some call them transferable skills, soft skills. What really happens in Europe might not be how we define these things in our context. So we need to redefine them in our context, having in mind the kind of parents you're talking about.
Yeah.
Parents who have no who are looking at these things. Some of them don't know the importance. Some of them don't know what to do, and thinking how we can work together to build them. So collating that information, what works in building and nurturing of these competencies is very important. And I think the curriculum and people who design policies and all that need to actually look into how parents are involved in the learning process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Mugo, what would you recommend as a framework for parents' capacity building? Because when you talk about critical thinking and problem solving, how do you define that? What do you recommend for the framework for parents' capacity building? Because if you're supposed to teach a learner that, and we all think very differently.
It's actually very simple.
Yeah.
Because when you look around what happens in our classrooms and at home, I think there are two risks or dangers in getting our children to learn problem solving. One is a discouragement of questions that Purity has alluded to. Because questions can be bothersome. I mean, I have children who asked a lot of questions, and many times you feel tired, you don't want to be asked, and yet you know that there is no discovery, Trevor, on this earth that did not emanate from a question. And so questions are the most powerful thing. And you know, children, when they are growing up, they learn through asking questions. You know, hi ni nini, huyo ni nani. Sometimes you feel they are just testing you. But and so as a parent, the first thing in that framework is to just understand that you need to do two things: encourage them to ask questions, because that's how they will discover something, but also ask them questions. And the second danger, and I link to what parents ought to do, is the danger of simple questions. If you go to our classes, observe how questioning is happening. The teacher starts asking a question before the teacher has even finished. Half of the children are me up. Yeah. Now, it means either that question is too simple or there is a problem. And those kind of questions that teachers ask and parents ask are questions that have only one answer. Now, in life, the kind of challenges tunakumbana nazo, you know, they don't just have one answer.
Yeah.
So what teachers and parents, especially teachers, ought to do is look for more complex questions that don't just have a single answer. Encourage children to first think before they raise up their hand. So ask the question and first pause. So that you force them to understand the problem that you have posed, and then the information that they need to seek to understand that problem. You know, if it is fire, for instance, fire has come out of this building, we can't just dash to get water, because there is some type of fires that don't need water. You can't use water to put off. Yeah. You need something else. So we need to understand the source of that fire and so on. And then move to looking at the different solutions. Now, you realize that most of the questions that we ask have either two defined answers, two factors, three. Who say there must be three?
Yeah.
Can one challenge one of the three so that we reduce to become two? So we are supposed to think about different answers, and then use a logical way of selecting one that you think is best because of certain reasons, and applying that one. So problem solving is not about a question and an answer. It's about a question and a process to arrive at the best solution.
Okay.
So if parents understand these simple things, you know, questions that challenge the mind, not just the simple questions, but then the framework is in the cooperation between the teacher and the parent. I think schools have to figure out, especially in this era of CBC, that parents are part of you, of the teachers that you have. So if you have 12 teachers in the school, add the number of parents to get the total number of teachers that school has. So that the beginning of the term, every class teacher should be calling the parents and telling them that this term we are addressing 1, 2, 3 competencies and 1, 2 values. And the kind of activities that promote this, the things you can be doing at home are this 1, 2, 3, and at school, we'll be doing these kind of things. Together, we will do these projects, if it is cooking.
Yeah.
Because cooking teaches children this. And the best way, as you cook with them, is to do this and this and this. And meanwhile, prepare for these kind of materials because we'll keep on asking for them. But now you find, I think, because there lacks this collaboration, the teacher and the parents, or the teachers in this side of the wall and the teachers on the other side of the wall, don't work as a team.
Yeah.
They don't collaborate. So I think we have a big opportunity for every school to figure out how to make parents part of them, so that then there is consistency and they are able to work together to promote these competencies.
All right. I have to take a quick break here on the Monday Report. When you come back, we're still talking about life skills and values. There are 7 core competencies being trained at the CBC level, and also some values there: creativity and inclusiveness, relevance, integrity. Those are the values, but we also have communication and collaboration, critical thinking and problem solving, imagination and creativity, citizenship, learning to learn, self-efficacy, digital literacy. That's what we're talking about. We'd also like to hear from you at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. We're back in just a bit.